Swinburne.
I think it's about the balance between level 1 and level 2 and how the delegated acts are going to work. Yeah. Because in theory, if we get level 1 correct, it then gives flexibility for the actual implementation to actually then be a little more flexible. And so the balance is going to be very critical in all of this.
And to satisfy Lord Hamilton, do you think that balance is about right at the moment? That's you have your doubts.
I have my significant doubts, and I believe that from the amendments I've read so far, that the Parliament, if not the Council, will already remedy much of the balance and make sure that there is far more in level 1. We've already seen, obviously, the rule-making, the technical standards that have been written by ESMA are in their infancy. They're in their first round of writing these rules. And unfortunately, I say unfortunately because I think they had a lot of work to do, in documents like the AIFMD, the Hedge Fund Management Directive, and the short selling regulation, they were very politically motivated dossiers in the first place, and there were lots of grey areas left in level 1, which means that level 2, when they've come to write those technical standards, it's proving quite problematic as to what is a political decision versus what is actually just implementing. And so I think in EMIR we have taken the level 1 and made it a lot clearer as to what the role of ESMA is and what the technical standards they have to write. And I think that we can come into some detail on that here, but we are going to have to specify in level 1 some significant parameters by which they actually have to take into account certain things, particularly if they're going to be defining which markets need pre-trade transparency, which markets don't. We need to have some detail in level 1 to guide them.
I'm going to invite Baroness Hooper in, but I think those areas that are of concern for you, the ones which we ought to scrutinise more, would be very useful to learn throughout the conversation. Baroness Hooper.
Before I ask my question, premeditated question, may I follow up on that by saying you did in your introduction say that the MiFID 2 was a response to a built-in review clause in MiFID 1. Is there therefore going to be a built-in review clause again in MiFID 2? Will we see a MiFID 3?
I'm not very popular in the Parliament for saying I firmly believe there will be. I think developments in the market are such that it will happen. Yeah. And there are too many things. We can have a review clause without having MiFID 3, of course. If they're not significant, that they're minor amendments, we can do it through the review clauses that are in there. But I do believe that the market will adapt, the market will transform once again, and we cannot hold innovation back, nor should we want to hold it back. Therefore, I think we are likely to see a MiFID 3. I suspect that there will be others dealing with MiFID 3.
Would you like just to wink at that one, Monsieur Fibonacci? Do you think there might be a MiFID 3, or just to help us?
Most certainly, yes. I mean, there's no such thing as the regulation that's going to exist for the rest, till the end of the world.
Thank you. Well, it's probably a sort of quite a sequitur, but transparency in all things is considered to be beneficial. So how do you assess the impact of the Commission's proposals on trade transparencies, and should a distinction be made between pre- and post-trade transparency?
Yes, a distinction should be made. Both levels of transparency are essential, but the technicalities may be different, and they can certainly be different depending on the asset class you're talking about and the sort of transaction you're dealing with. Certainly in the equity world, pre-trade transparency is essential if you want to have the ability to have a market that has a meaningful purpose and that has all the information that is necessary for market participants to deal at a price that makes sense to them. Which is why we think that a consolidated system, EBBO sometimes called, to show market participants what the best bids and offers are, is absolutely essential, certainly in the equity world. In some other spaces, it can be very different. Certainly in the bond market, and you would have to distinguish between government bonds and corporate bonds, it can be different because the nature of those markets is different. The equity market is about fungible assets that trade all the times with various types of participants. If you look at the corporate bond markets, some bonds trade once every other week. Does it make any sense to have pre-trade transparency when you have one line of it, for 3 million euros or pounds or whatever, trading twice a month? You have to distinguish, which is typically where we have to be very, very careful and not to say, it shouldn't be a religion. I am, for pre-trade transparency or against. I mean, the principle is clearly good, but then you have to distinguish per asset class. In the world of derivatives, it's different again, depending on whether you're dealing on plain vanilla or non-plain vanilla derivatives. Plain vanilla being simple features, classical derivatives. You don't have the same answer, and depending on the size you're dealing in, the answer is going to be very different as well. I would say the vast majority of derivative transactions should have pre-trade transparency, but there is a case for large size transactions for not having pre-trade transparency. So, the short answer is yes in principle, but then distinguish per asset class and types of transactions, and please adapt to the reality of the market. Post-trade transparency is absolutely essential. There should be a consolidated tape, because information is absolutely vital if we want financial markets to have a meaningful economic purpose. Because any trend, in our view, that goes against post-trade transparency comes down to saying, I don't trust markets, and I don't think that markets, should concentrate the information for the purpose of dealing. And if we believe that, what are we doing here? Why are we organizing financial markets? So I would almost see as a contradiction the fact that not pleading for post-trade transparency and being in favor of financial markets.
Thank you.